Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Plank of the Week, the one place where you can be as judgmental as you want, but we'll actually do all the heavy lifting for you because we're the ones that are going to be deciding who has been the most ridiculous person or organisation or sporting organisation as well. We don't know actually who's going to win it, but we've got some great nominees and we've got some great guests here today to pick it all up for you. Will Geddes joins us, security expert, friend to the stars. Reem Ibrahim, who's a Conservative commentator and now with the IEA as well. Candice Holdsworth, of course, making a return, always popular, and man of the seasons, man for all seasons, you might say, Mr. Russell Quirk. The thing that they are all looking for to win is this, the Plank of the Week. And let's get things started straight off with Will Geddes. Who's your first nominee?
Well, I hate to be unoriginal, Mike, but and especially as this person may have won the title last week, but it is Matt Hancock.
He's still in it, isn't
he? The gift that keeps giving. And, you know, well, with every new revelation coming out of his WhatsApp treasure trove, it's yet again just confirming all the insidious and unpleasant suspicions we've always had of MPs, the way that they manipulate us as the electorate, how they manipulate everybody else around them, and are really only out for their own vested interest. And, you know, it's a shame that when he did the celebrity get me out of here jungle thing, when he said, I want people to really get to know the real me. Well, Matt, we're finding out about the real you.
We don't like
your
it
WhatsApps.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, last week it was a revelation that these WhatsApps had been written the way that they had been. But ever since last Friday, when we named him as Plank of the Week, there's been even more stuff that's come out.
Yeah, and it's getting worse. And from what I hear from my sources, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And so, I mean, I would have thought he'd hit rock bottom with this latest revelation, which was to do with this MP, James Daly, who was looking for financing for a disability hub. And this was obviously to help local community. And what we're beginning to find from Mr. Hancock's WhatsApp chain is he's using that as leverage for the funding of it for him to be voting. And if they didn't get his or secure his vote, he wouldn't get his funding. So it's nice to see that although we get these promises within their manifestos that they're going to be helping communities, they're going to be helping the disadvantaged, helping the disabled, that actually, no, it's all about what do I get out of this if you're going to get any money.
That's the troubling thing, isn't it? And James Daly and I spoke about this. I had him on my show this week, and he said it never actually got to the point where they did threaten him, but he was one of several rebel MPs who didn't think that some of the COVID restrictions were required. They were asking for more evidence. And Hancock's response was, you know, let's lean on them and make sure that they do what we want them to do.
Wasn't it even more sinister than that? I mean, the WhatsApp messages show that the special advisor says, hey, Matt, you know, Secretary of State, you can, if you like, lean on this chap in terms of this disability issue and squeeze him so he votes the right way insofar as whatever it was, another lockdown vote at the time. Matt Hancock's response was, yes, 100%. I mean, it was unequivocal that he was prepared to disadvantage the users of that potential disability facility for the purposes of getting a vote through.
And continuing, obviously, the scamdemic as it was obviously progressing. I mean, the other things that, you know, there were just so many revelations, like him saying, oh, when will we release the next, the next variation of the virus, you know, and let's scare the pants off the general public. I mean, it is despicable. I mean, if you saw a drama on telly...
maybe that was his technique with Gina.
Scare her up and then she'll get there.
If you actually saw that within a drama on TV... you wouldn't actually believe it. You go, oh, don't be so ridiculous.
It's kind of House of Cards-esque, isn't it?
He was the worst person at the worst possible time. Could you have had a worse health minister? I really don't think so. Like, Matt Hancock was just like this cartoonish character throughout the whole thing. He was a ridiculous person.
And his awful amateur dramatics as well. It's when he's on
weeping.
The weeping bit really gets me.
Crocodile tears on Good Morning Britain. I mean, I had no sympathy for him whatsoever because he was the one that was locking us down. He made those decisions, and I think that what this really shows with all of these WhatsApp messages and all the revelations from this week is that essentially the government is run by a bunch of Oxford-educated individuals that control the government through WhatsApp messages.
But also aren't very good.
And also are very incompetent,
Yes.
I mean, so incompetent. I mean, he's so incompetent. He gave all these messages to Isabel Oakeshott, who then gave them to Daily Telegraph.
I think that's the most astounding.
And his kind of faux outrage at that was even funnier, wasn't it? Because, of course, he says he's already given them to the inquiry. And so if he's already given them to the inquiry,
There should be nothing
technically
new.
they're in the public interest already.
Yeah.
What's he worried about? Unless, of course, the inquiry was never going to publish them. Heaven forbid.
Well, it will, but of course, as was Isabel's motive, in about 10 years' time, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, my world's all about
got-
secrecy. It's about keeping information confidential when it needs to be kept confidential and doing the utmost to try and maintain that. But in this instance, I think certainly what Isabel's done has been a duty to the general public and I think to the electorate at large to understand
But
really what was going on behind the scenes.
And the COVID inquiry is going to cost the taxpayer upwards of £85 million.
Well, it's already cost 85 million.
It's already
They haven't
we don't
found
know how
anything
much.
out.
Yeah, we don't know how much.
And do
more
we
it's
honestly
going
have
to
faith
cost.
that in 10 years' time, when it is actually produced, when it's
Exactly.
published, that it's actually going to make any difference
Yeah.
at all? That it's
No.
actually going to come up with a
Probably
proper...
not.
Well, actually, a lot of those
Otherwise-
MPs might have been voted out by the time any of the information actually comes out, so it doesn't affect them.
The issue, I guess it's great for you, actually, in terms of this whole Matt Hancock thing and Isabel Oakeshott kind of outing him as she absolutely should have done, is that I suspect Matt Hancock is going to be a candidate on this show for the next several weeks.
He is.
Oh, yeah.
He is. And, of course, who could forget that incredible performance by his so-called lawyer on another channel
that
we
was
won't
brilliant.
mention,
That was
who went
brilliant.
on berating them for naming his connection to Matt Hancock until they showed the email, which actually said, well, no, you asked us to. And he went, oh, right, I take it all back.
I forgot the knot.
I mean, so you can't even pick a decent lawyer
I
in
know.
Hancock.
It was brilliant.
I mean, and this is probably kiboshed his, because he started to form himself into a sort of, media personality. This has almost certainly kiboshed his entire career, isn't it?
Let's hope
Yeah,
so.
good.
He's going to have to, just emigrate and go and live in Romania, maybe, with Andrew Tate.
Well, he might sell a few books now
could
because I
move
don't think
into
many people
Andrew
bought it, did they?
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure
Maybe you
some-
could find something in notoriety. I don't know.
Absolutely right. Let's get on to the next one. Reem, who's your
Yes.
first nominee?
So I'm nominating Hershey's chocolate. And
Yes.
The reason why is, so earlier this week on Wednesday was International Women's Day. Obviously here to celebrate all the wonderful things that women have done, but also the amount of changes that need to happen in order to reach gender equality. Hershey's chocolate have decided to slap on a trans woman onto their chocolate wrapper in order to celebrate women. What a disgrace. I cannot believe how tone deaf this is, first of all. But secondly, when we're trying to celebrate women and talking about the way that freedom and liberties have been achieved for women, they haven't been achieved by trans women. Whether or not you believe trans women are women is a completely different conversation. This is so
Do they like
insulting.
chocolate would be my question.
Well,
Who knows?
Who knows if they like chocolate? But I just think
What you're
it's so
saying is Emily
insulting.
Pankhurst, for instance, was definitely a woman.
Emily Pankhurst was definitely a woman,
Sure.
probably the last.
Are you sure?
Well, what
I
is a
can't
woman?
make up my mind. Well, listen, we have a little clip, I believe, of the advert, so let's have a look
Oh,
at it.
brilliant.
My name is Faye Johnstone. I'm the executive director of Wisdom to Action. We can create a world where everyone is able to live in public space as their honest and authentic selves. See the woman changing how we see the future at Hershey's Canada.
Oh, for God's sake.
I mean,
Changing how we see the future, but you're not a woman. Like, you cannot talk about this. I just think it's awful, isn't it?
Or a
living your
clairvoyance, are they?
authentic self as
Yeah,
well. It's so
authentic self.
Californian, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've got like this
Beautiful.
booming masculine voice talking about Women's Day. I mean,
I don't really have a problem with that as much as I do about having to put it on chocolate. And it's the same idiocy that we saw from Toblerone this week. Toblerone apparently now can no longer have the Matterhorn on the chocolate.
Why?
Because apparently in Switzerland, if you don't have enough of the production in Switzerland, you're not allowed to use any Swiss mountain. So
I
now
love
guess
that.
what they're going to replace it with? A generic mountain. I'm going, why?
What, they've copyrighted their mountain.
Well, no. Well, apparently the Swiss have some kind of mad rule that if something isn't made 100% in Switzerland,
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can't
be
use it as a
claimed to
backdrop.
be Swiss, or you can't use any
That's
Swiss
brilliant.
imagery.
I actually
Very
kind of
funny.
like that.
And of course, M&M's did a very similar thing last year, didn't they?
Yeah.
Where they degendered the M&M's. You know the little characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They took
Oh
the
my
high heels
God.
off the female M&M and put her into trainers.
But this is a problem, isn't it? And I know that you wrote a piece about International Women's Day this week, because so many companies now are just getting involved in it and going, well, let's make sure that we've done something. And I heard somebody saying on the radio this week, whatever you do, if you are going to do an International Women's Week thing or International Women's Day thing, don't make it pink.
Yeah.
You'll notice I'm wearing a pink shirt, but it's not for International Women's Day, because as I've often said, International Women's Day is every day for me.
But if we cross the divide
Yeah.
now, Mike, though, into a place where it's kind of almost these companies are trying to virtue signal each other.
Yeah.
It's got to the next stage.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever next, where does this go?
And this is where Hershey's chocolate was trending on Twitter because a lot of people were saying we're going to boycott them as a result of this advert.
But Hershey's probably think this is great.
It's a great marketing campaign.
But that's what it is. It means that everybody that's gotten riled up has gotten riled up, and now we're sitting here talking about Hershey's chocolate.
Yeah.
We've got more people out there buying Hershey's chocolate.
It's not very good, is the other thing about Hershey's.
But not if they do
Sorry about
boycott
that,
it.
Hershey's. It's
Doesn't
American
taste great,
chocolate. They
does
don't know how to
it?
make
No.
chocolate in
Yeah,
America.
not if they do boycott it.
No, absolutely.
They do in
Not a good
Switzerland,
issues
but
with
you've got to be
Wales.
careful about the
yes.
mountains.
I'll buy that. I'll
Totally.
buy the Swiss chocolate. I like the American stuff. I lived there for too long, craving fruit and nut. Russell, what do you got for us?
So for this one, I speak through personal experience.
This is always good.
On Monday, I got into a little bit of trouble
Did
with
you?
the British Transport Police.
Goodness.
Therefore, and in fact, the whole kind of commerciality of the British rail network.
And there you are.
On my plank.
That's a live picture of you being stalked by
me.
the British
Yeah,
Transport
yeah.
Police.
So this is me getting off a train
Mind
from...
you, you do look a bit troublemaking.
Well, a lot of my friends have said that I look like a hooligan, and no wonder they rounded on me.
Yeah.
So this is me getting off a train from Grantham, having seen a client at King's Cross, being met by 4, and I say police officers. On Twitter this week, lots of people have scolded me for saying, well, no, 2 of them were PCSOs, they don't count. Well, as far as I'm concerned,
They're
they get a
still
salary.
cops. Yeah.
Well, they get paid.
They're cops.
They're also British Transport Police. And look, here's where I got into a little bit of trouble. I bought a ticket on the Trainline app, which we all know, and presumably millions
Sounds
of us
legal so
use.
far.
It is so far. Bearing in mind the Trainline app apparently was actually started by the train companies and then spun off as a separate commercial entity. Anyway, buy my ticket, get to Grantham, on the way back, ticket inspector comes along and checks my ticket and tells me that it's not valid. He actually says to me, sorry, mate, bad news. And I said to him, what, is it going to rain? What are you talking
The
about?
train's going to crash?
Yeah, you tell me.
It's
And he
going to
said,
be on
no.
time?
He said,
No.
No.
He said this
Don't be
little thing...
Well, the
ridiculous.
trains are never on time in
He says to me this
country,
little
like.
thing here. He said, you should be on a Hull line train, not an LNER train.
Cool.
And I said, oh, right, OK, thanks. And he said, you've got to buy another ticket, mate. And I said, OK, well, fine.
Did he keep calling you mate?
Yeah, he did.
I'm not keen on that.
And
I
I
don't
said,
like strangers calling me
so
mate.
I said, OK. I said, well, we'll argue about this a bit, I think, but depending on what the cost of that ticket is. And he said, it's £120.
You're joking.
And I was halfway back
And
already.
how long is the journey?
It's an hour and 5 minutes.
Dear God.
That's a lot of money per mile. Anyway, I, being me as I am, kind of politely, and I was polite, refused to pay the £120, given that I'd already bought a return ticket for about 80 quid. And he said to me, OK, well, he said, when you get to your destination at King's Cross, he said, you will be met by the police. And I said, look, I don't want to cause trouble.
for God's sake.
I don't want to cause trouble.
You're lucky to be on a train,
Yeah.
because most of the time they either have been cancelled or there's a
Yes,
strike, so you can't use them.
But I'm showing him the ticket on the app, and basically because I'd somehow deigned to not get on one that was blue, and I'd got on a train that was red, as is the difference between those two
Presumably
trains.
you didn't know this at the time.
Well, who
either.
would?
Yeah.
Which
No.
consumer would know which train you're supposed to be on in terms of its name? And bearing in mind, as it turns out, there was nothing down the side of the train anyway. Anyway, so I get to King's Cross, I get off, and as that picture shows, there's literally 4 police officers waiting for me.
Such overkill.
So my big question,
that's-
Russell,
And were they just waiting for you?
They were.
So they'd actually been
contacted.
scrambled.
They had.
They have
because-
nothing better to do.
so my big question is,
here's
why
the
didn't you get off the station before? Bad train
Well, it was a
craft,
direct
Russell.
train, unfortunately.
Oh, was it? Damn it.
Anyway,
Okay.
so I'm, despite what
Should
some
have
of...
called Will and he could have organised...
Yeah,
We would have run a distraction for you.
You could have, like,
I'd have
pulled
put
up-
on my handsome mask and...
No, you could have pulled over
grey
one
flicks.
of those, Mercedes V class
That's it. Yeah,
trucks.
Viano or
just
something.
chuck him in the back.
That's it, just
or
roll-
a Chinook
through the
overhead or
Straight in
something.
there.
Anyway, so look, a very long story short, I've kind of very politely argued with the police officers, and I did say, look, I would have thought that your resources would maybe be better deployed
Oh, dear.
elsewhere.
They don't like that.
In a very nice way. And they basically said to me, we've got 2 choices. We're either going to issue a fixed penalty, and if you refuse that, we're going to arrest you. 4
my
police
God.
officers,
This is outrageous.
20 minutes.
Arrested.
Nice.
Or,
Outrageous.
here's the thing, and this is why the train companies also deserve part of the Plank Award here. The ticket inspector says to me, he said, the other alternative, of course, sir, he's calling me sir now, is that you can give me your name. He said, then you can appeal against the penalty ticket. He said, but if you lose the appeal, which, by the way, they adjudicate on, not a separate body,
Oh, really?
they adjudicate on,
Oh,
he said, then the
okay.
ticket goes up 3-fold. And I said, look, with the greatest
So
respect...
then you'd be paying 300
360 quid. I said, look, guys, I'm not doing any of this. I said, so I don't want to be arrested. I will give you my details. And so the police officer looked at me and said, OK, I'm going to have to take your details and caution you. So I put on Twitter that afternoon...
Was it a formal caution?
It was no proper caution.
Yeah.
Right to remain silent, blah, 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 blah. I'm now being reported through the sergeant to the CPS for having a ticket, and I guess I'll have to go to court. Now, I don't want to go to court, I really don't, but I'm bloody going to, and I will go on the basis I'll defend myself, because not only is it ridiculous, And I've said on Twitter, which I've been criticised for, look, the police obviously should have better things to do, given perception of the British police force right now over what's just happened with the Cardiff crash and the police ignoring the parents, Sarah Everard, and so on and so on and so on. Now, I can be called out on the basis I understand that the British Transport Police do not deal with such things. But to the public, the perception is it's all the police.
Yeah.
The BTP are paid for by the rail companies, I get that. But how much of the rail companies subsidised by the taxpayer every year? £11 billion.
Yeah.
So I'm right.
Also, you had a ticket.
I had a ticket.
Hello, end of conversation.
I had a ticket, but they're not having it. And I even said to the police, look, should we just kind of forget this whole thing and just move on? So you four of you for 20 minutes, that's 80 minutes, can go off and do something else somewhere else? And they said, no.
You see, procedurally, I see that more as an issue with the train company rather than the police. The police are only enforcing what they're being told to
but they
enforce.
should. This is the problem with the police overall, though, isn't it? Because they seem to have no ability to show any kind of common sense or discretion. You know, like the
They probably don't.
when
They probably don't know.
When they're
Mike,
going out to people's
certain
houses to ask them why they've sent this tweet and that you may have caused harm.
Oh, well, that's a whole different kettle
Well, no,
of
it's
fish.
not, though,
Yes.
because what they should say is, this is ridiculous.
Proportionality.
We're not going to
It's a
somebody's
question
house.
of-
I
Do they
know,
not
but they
think
have to
for
follow
themselves?
procedure.
Like,
That's the boring thing.
obviously they're following those procedures, but do they
Yeah.
not have brains for themselves to sort of think, actually, this is really, really ridiculous?
It's a question of proportionality and
but
common
also-
sense. And there didn't need to be four of them.
Also,
No,
following
agreed.
procedure is one
Well, you're a
thing.
big fella.
Following procedure is one thing. Making out that because you've bought a ticket which apparently is for the wrong train because nobody told you that was wrong, this doesn't require you to be arrested.
And bearing in mind that ticket let me through the barriers at Grantham. So why would I
But
think...
then again, you were paying 40
Unbelievable.
quid less than you should have been.
Oh,
paying.
that's outrageous.
I think what happened
I think
was
Reem and I need to bake a cake for you, mate.
We'll bake you a cake.
Yeah.
But I think
Put
what
a
happened
file
was
in
that person on the train actually called up and said, we need to get 4 policemen because actually he's really big and strong and I think you'll
And
probably
believe-
break him down.
do you think I should take it as a
Take it as a compliment,
Take it as a-
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if
exactly.
they do take you down, don't
go
worry.
with cameras. We'll go with cameras.
We'll come and do the whole thing. We'll turn them all over. It'll be hilarious.
Excellent. And we'll do the cake.
Yeah. Candice, what have you got for us?
So, one of my planks this week is a Labour councillor in Wakefield called Usman Ali. Now, Wakefield's been in the news for like the past couple of weeks because of that controversy over the 4 boys who allegedly scuffed a Quran. Now, this guy, Usman Ali, absolutely beclowned himself in this issue. Rumours were spreading that something had happened with a Quran at the school involving schoolboys, and he thought it was wise to release a statement saying that they had desecrated the Quran, it was a provocation, and we need to come down firmly on this. He's talking about school children.
Yeah.
These are school children who received death threats, and he thought this was very wise and very sensible thing to do. Anyway, he was challenged on it and actually deleted the tweet. But it made me think so much of Roald Dahl, because Roald Dahl's been in the news, because that's what his books are about. They're about foolish, capricious and cruel adults. And kids know that adults aren't always wise and aren't always kind, and they can actually be really, really, really foolish.
Yes.
And it's so relevant
And
in this
unfortunately,
issue.
in Wakefield, there's been an awful lot of foolish adult behaviour going on.
Terrible.
From the press conference in the mosque
Yeah.
to the police. I mean, back to the police again.
Yeah.
Apologising.
I saw that.
And saying that, obviously we're not going to pursue this as a crime. Well, that's good, because it wasn't one. But I'll tell you what we're not going to pursue as a crime is the death threats that have been issued to the kids who supposedly were kicking the Quran around. It's absolutely bonkers.
Children. These were children. When you actually hear what was described, what happened, you just think, but that's nothing. Everyone should have forgotten about it by the end of the day.
Stop caring about being seen as racist or being seen as sexist or transphobic or whatever, and just do your job. And if you see a crime happening, prosecute it. This is not a crime. It shouldn't be prosecuted.
Also, it comes back, does it not, to the doctrine of fairness and the doctrine of equality, which is not that you treat different people differently in order to compensate for what you used to do. You treat everybody the same, don't you?
I wonder if it was a Bible, if it would have had the same
No.
impact.
Of course it wouldn't.
Of course
No.
not.
No. But these bullies should not be appeased. People who respond like that need to be told, no, that is a disproportionate reaction that will not be tolerated. Not made to seem, OK, sorry, I don't want to offend you. No, those boys should have been protected.
I think there could be a practical argument as well for Usman Ali actually being prosecuted for incitement to violence as well.
Well, it was, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
I mean,
this
I
is
just
the
think...
trouble. It's a very thin line, isn't it? Between love and hate, as they say in the
Well,
song.
the family just felt so bullied.
Anyway.
I don't think they knew how to respond. But anyway.
Well, listen, coming up, we're going to be talking about a former footballer who you might not be surprised has made it to the Plank of the Week list, and a man who used to be Secretary of State for Health but isn't anymore. This is talkTV. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We've already got off to a fine start, and let's go no further than to look back at the BBC, who quite often make it for being the BBC, but this week are going to make it because of their involvement in a certain Gary Lineker. He's been on this show many times, guys, because he can't stop himself from making comments, even though he keeps being told that he should be a bit more careful about some of the things he says, even though he went out to Qatar and did a documentary about human rights. He still hides behind this idea that he doesn't have to apply the normal BBC rules to current affairs presenters because he's not a current affairs presenter. I say he is now, because when he was in Qatar, he did sort of, you know, Gary Lineker's panorama on the human rights. But he's always hid behind the fact that he only does sport. But, you know, don't forget the amazing Alan Shearer summing up of the human rights situation in Qatar. I mean, who could forget it? It was one of the greatest moments of television.
That was.
You know, way
in mankind. Mankind.
It's not very nice. You know, it's worse than me kicking up bloke in the head. You know, anyway. So I say he is, and he should be. But he got into trouble again this week because he sent out this tweet in which he said, according to him, the government policy on migrants was just another immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s.
Brilliant.
I mean, so basically accusing the Tory party of acting like Nazis, who, let's not forget, killed 6 million people in gas chambers through the course of the Second World War. I mean, it's so ridiculous, it doesn't even
I don't know what's worse. Is it
the
ignorance of Gary Lineker saying such a stupid thing, or is it the offence that causes to...
Or the arrogance.
Well, he's managed to upset a lot of Jewish groups and anyone with any kind of Jewish heritage, you know, because it's just not the done thing to talk about modern politics and the Nazis, because it was so horrific, and I think most of us would agree that, you know, as a moment in history, probably not really comparable to anything that you'd want to compare
and the
it
BBC's
to.
reaction...
Certainly not to a democratically elected government carrying out the will of the people.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the BBC's reaction is just to say, we're going to have a quiet word with him.
They've said that,
That's
but
it.
since they've said that, he's come out again and said, well, he's not going to stop standing up for the people who have no voice.
Well,
to which an awful lot of people
Who is he standing up for?
Well, apparently he's standing up for the people who have no voice, to which people say, what about the homeless in Britain? The people who are veterans of this country who are not looked after properly? How about the people who don't actually get to be put up in a four-star hotel and who do have to buy their own pizza and who do have to actually work for a living and pay tax so that we can pay £7 million a day to house these people?
I mean, there is this lovely argument about the fact that obviously by moving a lot of these illegal migrants, you're shutting down all the smuggling gangs, which is horrific as it is. But secondly, maybe those hotels which are accommodating many of the illegal immigrants with veterans, homeless people who could appreciate, obviously, with the full entitlements to be here in the United Kingdom. But I'm getting fed up of contributing my TV licence money to Gary Lineker's salary, and I think it's about time they've got to review this.
Yeah, I mean, they really do.
Can I just suggest that if Gary Lineker wants to be this kind of advocate of ordinary people, he should leave the BBC, stand for Parliament, sit there on £80,000 a year, like a Member of Parliament is, and just act accordingly. Rather than having the best of both worlds, which is to be paid by the BBC, in other words, us, the taxpayer effectively, under the licence fee, which is a tax, in my opinion, and, kind of having his cake and eating it.
Yeah. But let's not forget, before he sort of started beating his breast and rubbing his brows about Qatar and how awful it was and then justifying going there to do the World Cup because there he could raise awareness, right? It then suddenly was revealed that some years earlier he'd taken millions and millions of pounds from beIN Sport, which is the Qatari sporting arm of Al Jazeera, so it's a state broadcaster. He'd taken loads of their money. He didn't have a problem then.
No, of course
not. He didn't say anything at all about it. But I think also what his attitude shows is that there is a kind of a strain of opinion in this country, because there are a lot of people that agree with him because they are the sort of, you know, Ramona types who live in very leafy parts of Britain, who quite like working from home, and they don't mind the migrants coming.
Maybe the sheep that
we should let everybody in.
Yeah. Sheep that like Gary Lineker thinking for them. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
But you know what, you can disagree with the government's migrant policy, like I do. I don't think it is the right way forward in terms of removing illegal migration. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But you can disagree with the government policy without comparing them to the most horrific government to
exactly.
present.
Yeah, exactly.
To the people that have brutally murdered women and children and innocent lives. I mean, anybody that's been to Germany and seen the Holocaust memorials and seen what's
maybe
actually
that's what he should
there,
do.
Yeah.
Maybe he shouldn't actually see it. You know, Britain is no Nazi
But he's
Germany.
using his BBC platform paid by the licence payer for these proclamations, and that is not only wrong, but actually it breaches BBC.
It's unethical.
Exactly
it's unethical.
Yeah. And he also tweeted out after he got a bit of blowback from his earlier tweet. Great to see the freedom of speech champions out in force, demanding silence from those with whom they disagree. Well, nobody demanded silence. He's allowed to say what he says.
No
but,
one's saying he has to be banned from Twitter. But
no,
what we're saying is that
I think his constant and unstoppable, it would seem, need to promote himself on Twitter with these ridiculous views that he's got, which are like a childlike sort of vision of the world. Yeah. Here's a guy who played football till he was 35, and then when he was 45, suddenly discovered politics. And, you know, unlike everybody else, he's about 25 years behind in his development, brain-wise. Anyway, so what he should do is, as we say, remove himself from the TV. But he's my Plank nomination. Will, who's your next one?
Well, this is quite groundbreaking, I think, and it's something that's going to shock many of you.
Yes.
The stalwarts, the foundation pillars of every one of our childhoods is going to be toppled and destabilised. Because Lego have decided to bring out diversity people. And what I love is the presumption by them is that they've decided to actually attach various different conditions to... So, no, forget it, children. You can't create your own backstory for these Lego people. This is Timmy, who's got ADHD. This is Jemima, who's got anxiety. I mean, I'm not kidding.
They've got Eddie Izzard, who's now Sue Izzard, of course. One of her, characters.
OK, somewhere in the creative process...
There must be a non-binary one in there somewhere.
Maybe someone in the creative process, when they were spitballing this idea, went, you know what, we need to, help children understand ADHD and anxiety and various other mental health issues from an early age.
Yeah, because
this is the way we can educate them.
Because having a Lego figure really helps you understand.
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, it would have helped me massively.
Look, as a Lego figure that's got anxiety, it must be real.
Doesn't it kind of take away creativity?
Yeah, it does take away the backstory. Well, kids like to create their own backstory.
This is a princess that's married this prince. Instead, you've got Jemima with anxiety and John with ADHD.
I mean, also, it kind of would confuse me as a child because I would have put about three arms and one leg on my sort of Lego person. So, I mean, they'd be really messed up. But I think primarily...
I think that's a you problem, Will. I think
that might be a me problem. This is where I ended up today.
You put yours in the Lego car and then an escape route.
Threw it off the building.
Throw it out the window on a rope.
Exactly. So
no, his head's come off.
I'm just getting so bored.
You decapitated your Lego people.
OK, but enough of my childhood. I think the long and the short of it is stop forcing these things on kids. Let them grow through their parents, through the schools, through their friends. Understand that these conditions, which are incredibly serious, the problem is...
But they're trivialising them by doing this.
Exactly, it trivialises
That's the problem.
Rather than helping children understand. I mean, they're going to look at Timmy the doll and go, so, Timmy, you've got anxiety, and I'm 3. Not really quite sure what that's going to do for me.
No. I don't know where it goes, really, either.
I don't. I'm at a total loss.
It's like these things where, I was having a conversation with my son the other day who said to me that there were 72 genders. And I said, well, I'll have to get back to you on that because he was going to work. And I'm like, because I have to ask him to write them all down and talk me through them all. But these kids are coming up with this stuff because they're being taught it. And they're frightened necessarily, in some cases, of actually saying, are you sure about that?
Yeah, exactly.
His brother doesn't care. His brother doesn't agree with him.
But I guess maybe to your point earlier, genius marketing by Lego. Because someone like me, I now want to rush out and I want to buy all the
anxiety
for
Lego
irony purposes. Yeah. So I want the Suizard.
Is there an irony?
Greta Thunberg and so on.
Can we have a sarcastic Lego?
Sarcastic.
I know what I'd be doing with the Greta Thunberg one.
Harry and Meghan, everything.
The one thing I suppose you can guarantee is that if you step on them in the middle of the night, they're still just as painful.
You're still going to swear at them, regardless of if they have anxiety or not.
The age-old truth about Lego pieces.
Yeah.
The Harry and Meghan ones would hurt even more than the others, I suspect, if you step...
Best home defence ever, Mike.
Hurts for longer.
Yeah.
Because for the rest of your life, you'll be in pain. Reem, who's your next one?
Yeah, so I'm nominating our Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. So next week, this wonderful man that is going to tell us that despite having the highest tax burden in 70 years, he is now going to also increase corporation tax to 25%.
Yes.
Now, the problem with corporation tax going up to 25% is that it's driven out investment and we get less jobs, less investment for the people of this country. And he is just taking Britain down a path of decline. Yeah. We've got companies like AstraZeneca have already pulled out £320 million investment from the United Kingdom to Ireland now. who have a much lower corporation tax, and they've been very clear about the fact that corporation tax is the reason why they've driven out this investment. It's just absurd. I mean, I think Hunt just enjoys taking our money, clearly, but also it has these long-term consequences for the United Kingdom.
Also, trouble is, whenever I see Jeremy Hunt, I think, oh, I'd forgotten about him, because he's quite good at keeping out of the limelight.
Yeah.
He's unfortunately still there, isn't
On
he? He
purpose,
is.
probably,
And it
because nobody else
reminded me,
raised
of
him.
course, of how he kind of somehow swindled his way in, and I use that word advisedly. I don't mean that there was any jiggery-pokery financially, but he kind of somehow ended up in number 11 Downing Street.
He went from
as the
bottom of the
Chancellor.
pile,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah.
In the
This is
leadership
guy-
election to the
this is a
second
guy,
most important person.
who I think got less than 8% of the vote when he stood for leader of the Conservative Party.
I mean, this corporation
Nobody actually
taxing
wants him there.
This corporation taxing is crippling. I mean, I know this running my own business, so our contributions to corporation tax are horrendous. And we're all still trying to recover from the pandemic and the lockdowns. And what's a really smart way to push us back into recession? I think increasing corporation tax to 25%. So many companies are literally going to be going, how can we afford to continue this?
And they're already
it's the
leaving.
biggest burden for most
And you know
companies.
what? These bigger companies like AstraZeneca can afford to move their factories. What about these smaller companies?
Smaller companies will
These
find a
smaller
way, though, because
businesses.
as ever, what you know about higher taxes, particularly when it comes to companies and wealthy people, is that they find ways around it and they end up paying actually less tax. The tax
yeah,
take,
that's only for the
tax
top
take
tier,
goes
really.
down.
That's exactly what happens. So a central plank, for want of a better word, of conservatism, of course, is low tax. Why? Because they believe that if you work hard, you shouldn't give all of it away to the state, or most of it away to the state.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's been proven, when Thatcher, back in the mid-80s, reduced the rate of corporation tax, guess what happened to the amount of tax collected by the Exchequer? It went up.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
Because it
Exactly.
encouraged...
It's the Lineker.
Yes, exactly.
Economics
It encouraged
101.
growth and so on. So, and actually, companies like mine, you know, I sit there looking at my corporation tax bill, and I think now if it's going to be 25%, and as you say, Dublin's is less. Dublin's is 12%,
Yeah.
less than half.
Yeah.
I will just domicile in Dublin.
And I think there aren't any other any other countries that border each other that have such huge, drastically different corporation tax rates. Because what this means essentially is that any company, especially these larger companies that are in the United Kingdom, the adjustment costs for moving to Dublin is really quite small.
Yeah.
To go from 25% to 12% or 12.5% or whatever it is a huge, huge difference, and it means they will go over there.
You must never underestimate, though, how much people will be drawn to a free and open culture. People want that, especially around the world, as there's this sort of movement now to make everyone's tax the same. So Britain can actually be really unique if they have lower tax rates. We can compete, and it'll be amazing for us.
Well, I mean, this is why the UAE is doing so well. I mean, I know so many people who've re-registered their companies into the UAE, or even offshore, even into
And the
Switzerland.
Philippines, exactly.
It's a heck
And you
of a
know
lot
what I
better
find
than
quite
it is
ironic
here.
about
Also, he
that?
should be a plank anyway, just for having to stand up and do that
Yeah.
thing with the Chancellor's address, because it's so dull.
Yeah.
No matter who the Chancellor is, and his will be really dull, and it will be all that kind of analysis about, you know, whether your mortgage up, down, sideways. I mean, you know, it's a
And
dreadful...
we're taking
We could
1p off
also-
beer or whatever.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Just awful.
what-
And also they treat us like children. It's like, and here's what we're going to do with our money. It's like, not your money, it's our money.
Yeah.
That's why I've nominated Jeremy Hunt in the past for this show, is because he did this sort of coffee cup explainer video
Yeah, I remember that.
where he explained that inflation is caused by COVID and by Russia-Ukraine, but of course has nothing to do with the government's own quantitative easing policy.
And actually, rather like...
Which should have been
they
actually the
take us
coffee
for idiots.
factory.
Yeah.
Rather like Matt Hancock being nominated time and time again, I suspect next week we'll want to re-nominate Jeremy Hunt because, of course, the budget
The
is on
budget's
Wednesday.
next Wednesday.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
And
right.
there'll be lots of other rubbish in there, lots of promises of low tax in distant years to
Yes.
come.
Well,
Yeah.
listen,
But not very
coming up,
conservative.
Coming up, there might well be some people nominated who have been nominated before, but we can't tell you too much. This is Plank of the Week. We'll be back after this. Well, we're more than halfway through the Plank of the Week, and it's already a rather rich mix, as some would say, of various different suggestions. I wonder who's already going to be winning it. I'm not sure. We might already have a winner, but Russell Quirk is up next with his second nomination.
My
Who have
second
we got for us?
nomination. I've been shopping, Mike.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
Let me demonstrate.
very nice.
Cross buns.
Oh, oh,
Cross
oh, what have we got here?
one a penny.
Oh, blimey.
So,
Look at this. Hot cross buns.
my
Here we
second
go.
nomination.
Some for you.
Are these here?
Yes, please.
Greg's.
Yeah.
You'll notice that in that bag are hot cross
Yes.
buns.
Hot cross buns. Very
In
nice.
this bag, more hot cross buns.
Yeah, more hot cross buns. What's in here?
And in that bag, the Greg's bag,
Yeah. Hang on.
No hot cross buns.
No hot cross buns.
No hot cross buns.
But there is
something else in there, though.
There is a gingerbread figure.
Well, let me come to that, if
All
I may.
right, you can come to that in a minute.
Greggs, in their wisdom, for the second year running, for some reason, and they haven't actually given a reason, by the way, have decided that they will not be selling hot cross buns. Now, the fact they've been very silent as to the reason, I think is very telling. I suspect, and look, here's my supposition, it's just my opinion, it's just what I think, is that there's some anti-religious connotation. Yeah, they're lovely. Well, they're the really expensive ones from Go.
Oh, yeah, I got the cheap one, didn't I?
Yeah, you got the cheap ones.
All right.
Yeah.
You're not worth it.
Other hot cross buns are available. So my plank is Greg simply because they have decided, and they are the only ones, as you can see, their competitors have decided not to partake in this lunacy. They've decided not to sell hot cross buns. And I can only imagine it's because they're worried about offending people with the whole Christian connotation. Now, in fairness to them...
joking? You think that's the reason?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Sorry.
However, what I was surprised to see...
Welby will be up in arms.
...is when I was out doing my research earlier...
Christians, imagine that. At Easter, celebrating with a hot cross bun.
How dare they?
But when I was out doing my research, I was very surprised that given Greg's apparent alleged wokeness, they are still selling gingerbread men. And they actually label them as gingerbread man. That is a gingerbread man, not a gingerbread person.
I was going to say.
It looks to me, though, that the gingerbread man may be gender neutral. He doesn't appear to have any
labelled.
genitalia.
I took a picture. It's labelled as
a man.
It's labelled as a gingerbread man.
There's no rainbow on that. Throw that away.
Yeah.
No.
So Greg's in a sea of competitors.
Also, hang on. I may have to cancel this nomination of yours because if they've got a gingerbread man, then that's a point in the right direction, isn't it? And also, I heard today that their plan is to open some Greg's 24-hour drive-thrus, which will help an awful lot of people get through the working
for an
night.
emergency pasty in the middle of the night.
Emergency steak bake.
But they're erasing our history by
that might
refusing to
cancel
sell
my
it.
plank
I think
nomination.
you might have to cancel Greg.
Might cancel my diet.
We should still eat the hot cross buns.
I'll tell you what, change the Greg's graphic, right, because I've got a better idea, because only this week, it's a late entry, I'm afraid, and I'm going to give it to you to nominate them, it's Harry and Meghan. Because do you know what's happened? They've had a christening. Talking of Christians,
yes.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to be boycotted by Greg's. They won't be doing any Harry and Meghan sausage rolls, will they? But their little daughter, Lilibet, has been christened.
In LA?
In Los Angeles, yes, by no less than the Archbishop of Los Angeles, which apparently means that she doesn't automatically become a member of the Church of England because you have to come here for that, right?
Yeah.
But the great news for all of them is that Lilibet becomes known as Princess Lilibet.
She's actually Princess Lilibet Diana,
yes,
of course, isn't she? That's
right.
the full name. So, but this is so she's taking the title. Her mother and father, Harry and Meghan, are allowing her to take the title.
Yes.
Even though they previously said that they wouldn't because of its connotations in terms of Britain's colonial past.
But I thought, did she not say to Oprah Winfrey that her kids and Harry's kids would never be prince and princess because of the royal family's racist?
A lie,
no, because the royal family's racist. It turned out the real reason was because they weren't high enough up the pecking order, and so when the Queen died, everybody moved up one. And now they're prince and princess.
Because when the Queen was still alive...
Which was always going to be the case.
It meant that the kids wouldn't automatically get the Prince-Princess title, but now the Queen's died and King Charles is now monarch, the grandchildren therefore can have... So it's convenient for them and they're taking the title regardless now.
And they've just completely lied and said that it was due to racism when it wasn't. I mean, look, I absolutely hate it in general.
They don't mention racism anymore, do they?
They don't mention it because we all know that it's a complete lie. We know it's all rubbish. And we know that the royal family were never racist towards them and that's why they weren't called prince and their kids weren't called prince and princess.
But now they can have the title, they'll have it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They also haven't mentioned climate for a while, have they?
No.
Yeah.
Give them time.
No, but they'll come back to all that. And also, to follow up on South Park, making fun of them.
I love that.
I love South Park.
Chris Rock has now come out, the comedian in America, has now come out and basically said that they were not treated in a racist manner, and he's made fun of them as well. So it's all gone a bit wrong for them over there, isn't it?
Yeah, but he better not put Meghan's mouth in his name, in his,
name in his mouth.
I don't know. I'll forget it.
Be careful with that sentence, Will.
It's the hot cross bun that's got to my brain. I've got a sugar overload.
Those hot cross buns, I think somebody put some magic mushroom. Absolute rubbish.
Yeah, it all got a bit psychedelic.
One more thing just to mention about Harry and Meghan, though, because their good mate Omid Scobie has apparently issued a statement saying that King Charles and Camilla and William and Kate were all invited to the christening, but they didn't come. Wow. So imagine.
Oh, how selfish of them.
Do you wonder if that's in any way invented or perhaps untrue? I don't know. I mean, it could well be that Scobie's telling the truth, but maybe they just never got the letters of invitation.
Maybe. Well, should we be...
Royal Mail was on strike that day.
Should we be thanking ourselves for small mercies that they didn't actually bring Princess Lilibet here for a christening the day before the coronation and steal the limelight. I mean, I wouldn't have put that past Meghan, would you?
No, I would.
They would never do something like that.
No, she never would. Right, Candice, who's your next one?
So, my next nomination is the NHS, but more specifically, it's NHS Communications. So they're the people who publish all the stuff online, all the info about illnesses and whatever. Very interestingly, this week, about 1,000 clinicians, so this is nurses, doctors, various people who work within the NHS, they have said we need to stop with this dehumanising, gender-neutral language when it comes to women's health. Really, like, scary phrases like chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, which makes you think of something out of a horror film,
It's
like a chest feeder. Yeah, chest feeder. Yeah. Things like people who get pregnant people, not women, pregnant people. I mean, how many midwives have helped a pregnant person give birth? No, it's women who give birth. I have given birth twice. I was not a pregnant person, I was a woman. These are deeply female experiences. But one thing that I do find really positive is I feel like in this country we've managed to get a lot of consensus across the political spectrum about this issue, and it stayed very much within the realm of women's sex-based rights. I think in the US it's a bit more partisan, and they haven't been able to build that consensus, and they haven't been able to get the medical community on board as much as you have in this country. And I think it's such a positive thing that doctors and nurses and various people are standing up and saying, no, this is not right.
No,
we need to rectify this.
It really is. And Piers Morgan put out a great tweet this week for International Women's Day, which said, "Happy chest feeder birthing partner people with cervix day."
I mean...
Because it is mad, you know, because all that happens is that language, which is supposed to be precise, becomes imprecise.
Yeah.
And you end up saying something that actually doesn't mean anything.
Yes, exactly.
Instead of describing what you're actually wanting to talk about.
You don't feed a baby from your chest.
No.
That is not where babies are fed from.
No.
Not to mention the fact, like we say, it sounds like something an alien would do.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds
But it's also
absolutely
inaccurate,
disgusting.
right?
It's
entirely
inaccurate.
inaccurate. But it's also, I think, pretty offensive. And I think that when it comes to the erasure of language for women, I mean, so this Wednesday was International Women's Day. I think that this week is really interesting because we haven't necessarily been able to define what a woman is. The Labour Party leader hasn't been able to define
some people haven't been
what
able
a
to.
woman is.
Most of us know what it is.
Most of us sane people, Mike, know what a woman is. And even, no matter what your view is on the trans debate, the fact that we are now erasing language for all women, for this 0.05% of the population, I think is absurd. And again, it's always women that are oppressed by this language
It doesn't do much for women's rights, does it?
No.
Well, it hurts us. Yeah. It hurts us even more. And I think that what's interesting is that women are always the people that have these language-based issues, and it always affects us the most. But actually, in this instance is actually hurting women, and it's always women that end up being hurt by it.
And again, it's the public sector that's adopting all this stuff, isn't it? Which is why we see all these jobs being offered for sort of diversity coordinators for this and that and the other, to make sure the language of these documents is properly policed. And how much money they must waste on rewriting
They're about
them.
80 grand a year,
Absolute
aren't they?
rubbish, yeah.
But even the pronouns don't make any sense. You know, this kind of gender-neutral pronoun rubbish, where you have to refer to people as they or them, they are plural pronouns.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're going to bring, you know, your friend and refer to them as they, you don't even know how many people are going to turn up. Do you? So it could be one person, it could be 40 or 50.
But you know what? I don't care what nonsense people want to identify as. If you want to identify as gender neutral and use they, them pronouns, so be it. You do you. We live in a free country after all. That's what a free society should allow. But what I don't want is this now erasing language. And Mike's right that this is primarily in the public sector. If you go to the private sector, you don't see any of this nonsense because people pay for a service and they want to be called what they are,
Unless
which is a
it's Ben
woman.
and Jerry's.
Well, I don't know, actually. A lot of the
I'm
corporations
sure
have adopted
you can find,
this.
yeah, again, but that's the big virtue signaling
I
corporations.
mean, the thing that
Anyway,
surprises me is supposed to be inclusivity, but it's doing exactly the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite. It's meant to disregard certain people, which is unfortunate. Coming up, we're going to talk some more about food. We're not going to eat anymore, but we're going to talk about the delivery business. That's coming next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. This is, of course, talkTV, and your Friday night is complete. We're going to be entering into the final furlong now. I'm going to be coming up with my last nomination and then picking a winner who will win the, of course, much wanted Plank of the Week trophy. Now, I'm going to nominate a supermarket. I don't want the supermarket that I've chosen to be in any way offended that I've happened to single them out, but it's going to be Tesco's this week, I'm afraid.
I love
Do you? OK. Well, you wouldn't love them if you were waiting for them to deliver some food to you, because they had what they regard as a nationwide IT issue. You always love it when they use the word issue, which basically means something's fallen over,
Crashed.
it's broken,
or they've been hacked.
it's crashed.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for thousands of people up and down the country who had ordered food shortly before the snow came, right, they didn't get their food deliveries. There was nothing that they could do about it. Sometimes they even got a phone call just 2 minutes before the food was due to arrive.
Wow.
And I just think the food delivery business in this country has now become such a booming business. But I have to say, I've had what I would call different levels of success and failure depending on which particular supermarket I've used, and I've given up on about 3 of them, Tesco's being one of them. Once because I had a guy deliver food to me, and I happened to live 3 floors up in a block of flats, and he rang me from the floor below to say that he was there. And I said, that's great. Well, are you bringing the stuff up? I'll be here. He went, well, no, I was hoping you might come down and get it. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, well, I don't have to bring it up more than 2 floors, so I brought it up 2 floors. So now you can come and bring it up for the next floor.
Isn't that against the very spirit of the word delivery?
Well, it sort of is. I said to him, bear in mind, I'm talking to him on the phone, and I can sort of hear him
downstairs
in the
Oh,
stairwell.
my God.
Brilliant.
And I said, look,
And
here's
he
the thing.
refused to go up.
When I ask you to deliver my food, I ask you to deliver it to my door as opposed to somewhere near my door or somewhere down the road where we meet in the middle.
So what did you do? Negotiate and meet in the middle?
No. I said, he said, well, I can't bring it up any higher. I said, well, just take it away then. He went, what? I said, just take it away. So he had to take it all back
Good
down,
for
put
you,
it back
Mike.
in the van, drive off and never use them again.
You sound as principled as I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have to say that these poor people, so there's people complaining, then their phone lines crashed because there's thousands of people complaining, saying, you know, we won't be able to now get any food. There's a lot of people who get food deliveries actually live in quite remote places.
Yeah.
And if you haven't ordered, you can't then get another order done. And they didn't have any replacements. So,
Well, and the elderly and the vulnerable.
Well, exactly, particularly with the snow coming and all of that. So I know they've been unlucky, but I just think these big companies really ought to be better at actually making sure that if something does go wrong, the whole thing doesn't just fall over.
They have one job. Right?
Yeah, you've got one job, you deliver food, deliver the food.
Yeah.
But they give us £3 meal deals, so I kind of forgive them.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have got one this week because I'm afraid if you'd
delivered
ordered
it,
it wouldn't be coming.
Yeah, no meal deal.
Well, they increased
No.
the price now, haven't they, to £3.50.
I don't want to give them an advert for their free meals because it's time to pick the winner of Plank of the Week. And it's not going to be Tesco's, it wasn't that bad. But I tell you what, there could have been many of these because they're all very good. It could have been in Extras, could have been Hershey's chocolate, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to give it to myself on this occasion because it has to be the one and only Gary Lineker, doesn't it? I mean, Gary Lineker, who has won it before, he knows what to do with the plank. I don't need to give him any instructions in that area. He says he's never going to stop criticising the government. He's never going to stop standing up for those people who need standing up for. Well, I'll tell you what, Gary, why don't you just stand aside for a change and leave the BBC? You are the Plank of the Week. Thank you very much, Reem, Will, Candice, and Russell, of course, and some hot cross buns to eat as well. Nadine Dorries is coming next Friday night with Nadine. We'll see you next week on Plank of the Week.
It's time for That Was the Woke That Was.
The topical quiz show that goes through all of the wokest stories of the week.
She has been fame hungry from the get-go.